You were led here for a reason. You felt the shift. You felt the discomfort. You felt something changing beneath the surface of your life. And you knew it was not random. Chosen one, you are not ordinary. You never were. The world has always felt slightly misaligned to you. Rooms felt heavy. Conversations felt shallow. Paths that satisfied others left you restless. That restlessness was not rebellion. It was revelation. There is movement in the spirit realm. There is divine orchestration behind the scenes. And right now you are standing at the edge of departure. Not physical departure, spiritual departure. You are being pulled off false paths. There are 9 divine creatures that signal this transition, 9 spiritual markers, 9 confirmations that your comfort is ending because your calling is accelerating. Not everyone will recognize them. Not everyone will understand. Only the chosen discern the pattern. If you have been seeing signs, if you have been sensing disruption, if something inside you feels both unsettled and awakened at the same time, pay attention, stay to the end, engage with this message. Because when you respond to revelation, revelation increases. First, the first creature appears in subtle form, a messenger that disturbs your comfort. You begin noticing a symbolic animal, in dreams, in visions, in sudden encounters, repeatedly. It catches your attention. Not because it is loud, but because it lingers. You try to dismiss it. You call it coincidence, but it keeps returning. Listen carefully. This creature does not soothe you. It unsettles you. It shows up when you are questioning your direction. It appears when you are tolerating what you have outgrown. It crosses your path when you are trying to convince yourself to stay comfortable. And suddenly, what once felt safe starts to feel suffocating. Have you felt that places you once enjoyed now feel tight? People you once resonated with now feel draining. Environments that used to affirm you now irritate your spirit. You thought something was wrong with you. It was not instability, it was activation. The first creature is a spiritual disruption. It arrives to disturb the illusion of comfort. It exposes the quiet compromise. It whispers, "You do not belong here anymore." Psychologically, this is disorientation. Spiritually, this is extraction. The enemy wants you numb, but the divine will not let you sleep through your destiny. So the creature appears again and again and again. It becomes a mirror. You start realizing that the dissatisfaction you feel is not depression. It is discernment, not confusion, clarity. You are being separated from false alignment. And yes, it feels lonely. Yes, it feels strange. Yes, it feels like you are losing stability. But understand this, isolation is not punishment, it is preparation. Comfort is being stripped because calling requires movement. Familiarity is dissolving because favor demands elevation. The first creature does not attack you, it awakens you. It signals that your season of blending in is over, your season of tolerating is over, your season of pretending is over. You are being called out of old cycles, out of inherited expectations, out of spaces that shrink you. This is why you feel unsettled. This is why you cannot go back to who you were. This is why the familiar now feels foreign. It is not chaos, it is divine interruption. And if this is happening to you, understand something powerful. You are already moving. Second, the watcher with piercing eyes appears. And this one feels different. You do not just feel unsettled, you feel observed. Have you noticed it? Predators in your dreams. Sharp-eyed creatures staring directly at you. Wolves, hawks, felines in the shadows. They do not attack, they watch. And when you wake, something lingers. You walk into a room and suddenly you see through people. Conversations reveal what is not being said. Smiles feel forced, energy feels split. Truth starts surfacing without you asking for it. You did not become paranoid. Your sight is sharpening. This creature signals exposure. Illusions begin collapsing when you enter a space. Not because you try, but because your presence carries light, and light exposes darkness. Have you noticed how secrets come out around you? How hidden motives reveal themselves? How deception seems to unravel in your proximity? That is not drama following you. That is discernment activating within you. The watcher with piercing eyes represents heightened perception. You are no longer spiritually blind. You are no longer emotionally naive. You are no longer tolerating what your spirit can see. And this has cost you, because when you see clearly, you cannot pretend. When you discern manipulation, you cannot participate. When you sense hidden agendas, you withdraw. Others call you distant. Others call you intense. Others say you have changed. You have. Darkness cannot hide from awakened vision. The enemy thrived when you doubted your instincts. The enemy operated when you second-guessed your intuition. But now you walk into a space and feel the atmosphere shift. Favor sharpens sight. Anointing refines awareness. Calling demands clarity. This is warfare. Because once you see, you become a threat. People who once felt comfortable around you now feel exposed. Conversations cut short. Invitations decrease. Energy shifts. Isolation increases. Do not mistake this for rejection. It is separation. The Watcher is teaching you to trust what you see, to trust what you feel, to trust what rises in your spirit without logical evidence. You are being trained in spiritual intelligence. Ordinary people rely on proof. Chosen ones operate on perception. You feel deception before it speaks. You sense envy before it acts. You recognize sabotage before it unfolds. That is not anxiety. That is protection. And yes, it can feel heavy, because seeing clearly means grieving illusions. Seeing clearly means losing comfort. Seeing clearly means accepting that not everyone walking beside you is aligned with your destiny. But this is confirmation. The creature with piercing eyes does not come to scare you. It comes to upgrade you. You are not meant to stumble blindly into your next season. You are meant to enter it aware. Guarded, prepared. Your sight is becoming weaponized. Darkness cannot ambush what already discerns it. So when truth surfaces without effort, when lies unravel in your presence, when masks fall the moment you arrive, do not shrink, stand firm. This is divine sharpening. And if your vision is increasing, now understand something. Departure is accelerating. Third, the winged messenger appears. And when this one comes, something inside you begins to rise. You start noticing birds at strange moments, feathers crossing your path, winged beings in dreams, flight imagery when you are at your lowest. Pay attention. These moments do not come when you are strong. They come when you feel unstable, when your external life feels uncertain, when foundations around you feel like they are shaking. Have you felt that contradiction? Internally, something is lifting. Externally, everything feels unsteady. That is not confusion. That is elevation colliding with transition. The winged messenger signals that ground-level living is ending. You cannot stay where you are. Not emotionally, not spiritually, not energetically. Old attachments begin to feel heavy. Conversations feel dense. Obligations feel suffocating. What once felt manageable now feels unbearable. You try to push through it. You tell yourself to be grateful. You attempt to force normalcy, but your spirit resists because you were not built for the ground. You were built for height, and height requires detachment. Have you noticed how certain people seem harder to tolerate now? How certain environments drain you faster? How compromise feels almost painful? That is lift. Wings are not decoration. They are warning. They signal departure, and departure is rarely comfortable. When a bird prepares to fly, it must release the branch. When elevation begins, stability must shift. That is why your life feels like it is trembling, not because you are failing, but because you are ascending. Darkness wants you grounded in fear. Favor pulls you upward into authority. The enemy whispers, stay small. The spirit declares, rise. And you feel the tension between those voices. Isolation increases. Misunderstanding increases. Distance increases. Because not everyone is meant to rise with you. This is where many retreat. They choose familiarity over flight. They choose comfort over calling. They choose acceptance over assignment. But you cannot. You have felt the lift. You feel it when you pray. You feel it when you sit alone. You feel it in moments of silence when something higher seems to call your name. That is not imagination. That is invitation. The winged messenger does not come to entertain you. It comes to prepare you. Preparation feels like instability. Preparation feels like loss. Preparation feels like letting go before you see where you will land. But you are not falling. You are being elevated. And elevation exposes. The higher you rise, the clearer you see. The clearer you see, the less you tolerate. The less you tolerate, the more separation occurs. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. You are being repositioned above false paths, above false validation, above false identities. Ground-level living is ending. You are not meant to crawl through life. You are meant to soar above deception. And yes, the air feels thinner up here. Yes, fewer people understand. Yes, the climb feels lonely. But only the chosen recognize the pull of altitude. If you are feeling the internal lift while your external world shakes, understand this clearly. You are not losing control. You are gaining height. And once wings spread, they do not fold easily. Fourth, the serpent crosses your path. And this one feels dangerous, not subtle, not symbolic in the distance, but confrontational. You encounter betrayal, sudden temptation, truth exposed without warning. It happens fast. Someone you trusted reveals their true nature. An offer appears that tests your integrity. A hidden lie surfaces and changes everything. You did not go looking for conflict. Conflict came looking for you. Have you felt that sting, that moment when innocence leaves the room? That instant when you realize you were standing closer to deception than you thought? The serpent energy does not arrive to destroy you. It arrives to force confrontation. Darkness can no longer operate in subtlety around you, so it reveals itself boldly. This is escalation. The warfare is no longer behind your back. It is in front of your face, and you are forced to choose. Will you ignore what you now see? Will you rationalize what your spirit has already rejected? Will you cling to comfort even when truth slices through illusion? The serpent represents exposure. But deeper than that, it represents shedding. Because departure from false paths requires transformation, and transformation requires loss. You cannot elevate carrying old skin. You cannot ascend wrapped in outdated identity. You cannot move forward while clinging to who you were. So the confrontation comes, not to shame you, not to break you, but to strip you. Have you noticed how situations lately feel sharper, how words cut deeper, how consequences appear quicker? That is refinement. The serpent tests your obedience. Temptation whispers. Old habits resurface. Familiar patterns try to reclaim you. But you feel resistance now, stronger than before, because you have changed. And this is where many chosen ones misunderstand the process. They think confrontation means failure. They think betrayal means punishment. They think exposure means collapse. No, it means transition. When skin begins to shed, it feels tight, uncomfortable, irritating. But that irritation is growth pressing outward. You are not being attacked because you are weak. You are being confronted because you are advancing. The enemy only challenges what threatens him, and you threaten him now. Your discernment is sharper. Your elevation is real. Your departure is near. So the serpent shows up to test your resolve. Will you compromise? Will you shrink? Will you return to old cycles because they feel familiar? Or will you shed, stand firm? Let the false relationships fall. Let the tempting shortcuts fade. Let the uncomfortable truth reshape you. This is not destruction. This is purification. You are being stripped of what cannot follow you into destiny. And yes, it feels intense. Yes, it feels personal. Yes, it feels like warfare. Because it is. But you are not the prey. You are the one being refined. When the serpent crosses your path, it signals the final shedding has begun. You will not look the same after this. You will not tolerate the same. You will not walk the same. And once old skin falls away, there is no returning to who you were. Fifth, the lion's presence enters your life. And this is where everything shifts. You are no longer just seeing. You are no longer just shedding. Now you are standing. Have you noticed it? An unexpected boldness rising in you. Words forming in your chest where silence once lived. A firmness in your spine where compromise once bent you. You speak, and the room reacts. You set a boundary, and resistance appears immediately. Conflict increases the moment you refuse to shrink. That is not coincidence. That is authority awakening. The lion does not sneak. The lion does not apologize. The lion does not negotiate its existence. and something inside you has stopped negotiating. You used to tolerate disrespect. You used to over-explain. You used to soften your truth to keep peace. But now peace without alignment feels like betrayal. You are not louder. You are clearer. And clarity intimidates darkness. Have you noticed how opposition intensifies when you stand firm? How certain people grow uncomfortable when you refuse to bend? How situations escalate the moment you hold your ground? That is not punishment. That is reaction. Darkness does not react to the passive. It reacts to the powerful. And you are becoming spiritually dangerous. The lion signals that your voice now carries weight in unseen realms. When you speak, atmospheres shift. When you pray, resistance trembles. When you declare truth, confusion scatters. You may not see it fully yet, but the spiritual realm does. You are no longer prey, you are presence. And presence disrupts hidden agendas. This is why warfare feels louder. This is why tension feels stronger. This is why certain battles seem to intensify without warning. You stepped into authority, and authority draws challenge. But listen carefully. Challenge is proof of rank. No one fights for ground that has no value. No one resists a voice that carries no impact. No one pushes back against someone who poses no threat. You are being opposed because you are advancing. The lion within you is not ego, it is assignment. It is the moment you realize you are not just surviving darkness. You are confronting it. You feel it when you walk into spaces that once intimidated you. You feel it when you say no without guilt. You feel it when you refuse to explain your standards. That is not arrogance. That is awakening. You are remembering who you are, chosen, marked, anointed, and the enemy knows it before you fully do. That is why the reaction feels disproportionate. That is why small stands create big responses, because your authority has multiplied. Stand firm. Do not retreat when the roar rises. Do not apologize for boundaries. Do not soften what the divine has strengthened. The lion is not a suggestion, it is a declaration. You are stepping into dominion over what once dominated you. And once authority awakens, there is no returning to silence. Sixth, the gentle creature steps forward. The deer, the quiet one, the one the world underestimates. And this is where your power becomes misunderstood. You feel more, not less. Your empathy deepens. Your awareness sharpens. Your sensitivity intensifies. You walk into a room and instantly feel the emotional temperature. You sense tension before a word is spoken. You detect manipulation beneath polished speech. And for a moment you questioned it. Why am I so sensitive? Why do I feel everything? Why can't I just ignore it like everyone else? Because you are not everyone else. Your sensitivity is not fragility. It is refined spiritual radar. The deer survives not by aggression, but by awareness. And your awareness has become precise. You notice how your tolerance for chaos has dropped. Dramatic environments exhaust you instantly. Petty conversations feel like poison. Emotional games feel unbearable, so you withdraw. And this time you do not feel guilty. That is growth. You are no longer trying to rescue what drains you. You are no longer volunteering for dysfunction. You are no longer sacrificing peace to maintain connection. Peace has become non-negotiable, and darkness hates that, because chaos once distracted you. Noise once clouded your discernment. Emotional turbulence once kept you unstable. But now you choose stillness. You choose quiet. You choose distance when necessary. That is not avoidance. That is discipline. Have you noticed how your circle has shrunk? How silence has become comforting? How solitude now feels protective instead of lonely? That is spiritual maturation. The deer does not roar. It moves strategically. It listens. It observes. It survives by discernment. And you are doing the same. Your gentleness has become power. You do not need to dominate a room to influence it. You do not need to shout to shift energy. You do not need aggression to command respect. Your calm unsettles chaos. Your composure exposes instability. Your quiet confidence irritates those who operate in manipulation, because they cannot read you easily anymore. You are not reacting. You are responding. And that difference changes everything. This stage feels subtle, but it is dangerous to darkness, because you are no longer easily provoked. no longer easily baited, no longer easily controlled. The enemy cannot manipulate what refuses emotional entanglement. You feel deeply, but you are no longer moved recklessly. You care, but you are no longer captured. That is evolution. Chosen one understand this clearly. Sensitivity in the hands of the unawakened feels like weakness. Sensitivity in the hands of the chosen becomes precision. You are becoming precise. Precise with your energy, precise with your time, precise with your trust. And as your peace solidifies, your departure accelerates. Because false paths cannot sustain someone who refuses inner chaos. The gentle creature is not retreat, it is refinement. And refinement always precedes revelation. Seventh, the raven appears, the dark bird, the one that circles when something is ending. And this is where it becomes undeniable. Closures begin happening without your initiation. Doors shut suddenly. Conversations end abruptly. Connections dissolve without warning. You did not force it. It happened. Have you felt that sharp finality? That moment when something you thought was stable simply stops. Relationships tied to your former identity fall away rapidly. People who knew the old you drift out. Alliances that once felt destined grow silent. It feels sudden. It feels cold. It feels irreversible. And for a moment you question yourself. Did I do something wrong? Did I push too hard? Am I losing everything? No, you are being released. The raven does not symbolize curse. It symbolizes completion. It announces what your spirit already sensed, that certain chapters cannot follow you forward. Opportunities vanish that once felt perfect. Paths you prayed for close. Plans you built collapse overnight. And the world would call this loss. But this is divine removal. You are not being stripped randomly. You are being cleared strategically. Darkness cannot trap what is being extracted. False paths cannot hold someone marked for higher ground. This stage feels heavier because endings always do, even when they are necessary, even when they are protective, even when they are ordained. You are watching pieces of your old life fall away, and there is no going back to retrieve them. That is intentional, because if it were easy to return, you would. If it remained comfortable, you would hesitate. If it stayed open, you might reconsider. So it closes completely, not halfway, not gradually, but decisively. Have you noticed how final it feels? How there is no urge to chase what left? How something inside you says, let it go. That is maturity. That is confirmation. The raven circles because the old version of you has expired. You cannot resurrect identities that no longer fit. You cannot revive connections tied to outdated alignment. You cannot reclaim opportunities that were stepping stones, not destinations. And yes, it can feel lonely. Yes, it can feel like everything familiar is disappearing. Yes, it can feel like you are walking through a clearing storm. But clearing is not destruction. It is preparation. You are being separated from what cannot sustain your next dimension. This is why it feels abrupt. This is why it feels sharp. This is why it feels undeniable. Because your departure is no longer optional. Chosen one, understand this. When divine removal begins, resistance is useless. What leaves now cannot remain. What closes now cannot reopen. What ends now cannot restart. Not because you failed, but because you have advanced. You carry something that cannot stay confined to former spaces. The raven signals that the old ground has been claimed, and you are being called elsewhere. Endings are not your downfall. They are your clearance. Eighth, the stallion begins to run. The wild beast, unrestrained, unapologetic, unstoppable. And when this creature moves, you feel it in your bones. Urgency rises in your spirit, not anxiety, not panic. Urgency, a holy pressure, a divine acceleration. You wake up with momentum. You think with momentum. You pray with momentum. Something is pushing you forward. Have you felt that fire, that inner insistence that says move, that quiet but relentless command that says now? You cannot sit still like you used to. You cannot delay like you used to. You cannot tolerate stagnation like you used to, because stagnation now feels like disobedience. Delays that once blocked you begin collapsing. Obstacles move. Conversations align. Unexpected openings appear. Doors swing open in directions you once feared. And that fear, it starts losing its grip. You realize something powerful. The only thing that could stop you now is you. The stallion does not ask permission to run. It runs because it was built to run, and you were built for movement. Have you noticed how quickly things are shifting? How opportunities are appearing without you chasing? How alignment feels faster than before? This is divine propulsion. The warfare was preparation. The isolation was strengthening. The shedding was necessary. Now comes motion. Darkness tried to slow you, tried to exhaust you, tried to confuse you. But confusion has cleared, exhaustion has lifted, clarity has sharpened, and momentum has arrived. You feel it when you speak boldly without rehearsal. You feel it when you make decisions without overthinking. You feel it when you step toward what once intimidated you. You are no longer negotiating with fear. You are advancing. And here is the truth. Staying where you are would now require disobedience. You know it. You feel it. To remain in old patterns would feel wrong. To reattach to old spaces would feel forced. To shrink again would feel suffocating. Because something in you has broken free. The stallion represents power in motion. You are not waiting anymore. You are moving. And when the chosen begin moving, resistance cannot keep up. You are spiritually protected, divinely directed, marked for acceleration. The enemy senses it. That is why tension may spike. That is why distractions may increase. That is why last-minute tests may appear. But understand this clearly. Momentum from heaven cannot be canceled by earthly resistance. You are in motion now. The ground behind you is fading. The path ahead is forming. The hesitation is dissolving. And the more you obey the urgency, the stronger it becomes. Run toward alignment. Run toward truth. Run toward the call that once scared you. Because this is not reckless movement. It is ordained acceleration. And once the wild beast runs, it does not return to the cage. Ninth, the Dragon Slayer archetype rises. This is not subtle. This is not symbolic from a distance. This is war. You feel it. One final confrontation surfaces. Not random, not small, but tied to your deepest fear. The fear you thought you buried. The insecurity you thought you outgrew. The lie that once defined you. It stands in front of you now. Have you noticed how the pressure has intensified? How the opposition feels louder? How resistance seems coordinated? That is not setback. That is the final guardian of the gate. Before breakthrough warfare peaks, before elevation locks and darkness makes its loudest attempt. Because it knows, if you pass this moment, you do not return. The dragon represents concentrated resistance. Old trauma, old limitation, old identity fighting to survive, and you are forced to choose. Comfort or calling, survival or sovereignty, silence or sword. There is no middle ground here. You feel the weight of the decision. You feel the gravity of the moment. Because something inside you understands. If you confront this, everything changes. If you speak now, you cannot unspeak. If you move now, you cannot retreat. If you stand now, you cannot shrink again. This is destiny pressure, and you were built for it. The opposition intensifies because your authority is undeniable. The challenge grows because your growth is irreversible. The fear surfaces because it must be slain. Listen carefully. The dragon only appears to those capable of defeating it. Ordinary people avoid this battle. Chosen ones walk into it, not recklessly, but resolutely. You are not fighting for validation. You are not fighting for approval. You are fighting for alignment. And when this creature appears, your exit from false paths becomes irreversible. You cross a line internally. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop bargaining with limitation. You stop explaining your destiny to those committed to misunderstanding you. You step forward. And when you step, something shifts in the unseen. Chains break. Assignments activate. Authority seals. You are no longer becoming, you are. This is the sealing moment. The Dragon Slayer does not just defeat opposition, it defines identity. You realize you were never meant to stay small, never meant to stay hidden. Never meant to stay confined to false paths built by lesser expectations. You were meant to conquer. Now hear this clearly. You are chosen, not by accident, not by ego, but by design. Every disruption prepared you. Every betrayal sharpened you. Every ending cleared you. Every confrontation strengthened you. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was random. You are spiritually protected, divinely assigned, marked beyond reversal. Darkness tested you. It did not break you. Fear confronted you. It did not control you. You stand now as someone who cannot be erased. So choose. Choose calling over comfort. Choose sovereignty over survival. Choose destiny over delay. Type 9 in the comments if you know this battle is yours. If you feel the final shift. If you sense the irreversible crossing. Subscribe if you are ready to walk fully awakened, because this is not the end. It is activation. You were never ordinary. You were never random. You were chosen. And what is chosen by the divine cannot be defeated.